I'm done.
Hi there, welcome back to Charting Adventures, a podcast discussing how to level up your TTRPG experience. My name is Kyber, the only one with a working immune system.
Wow!
Call an ambulance! Call an ambulance! But not for me!
I mean, it's true. My name is Zari, and I've been sick for 2.5 weeks. On and off for like 3 weeks. It's been bad. So, apologies for delays in various things, but it is what it is. And anyway, as we were saying, this podcast, Charting Adventures, is part of Muse's Mythos. We are your compass for creating unforgettable tabletop journeys. And we are going to jump into today's topic, which is what I've been calling how to get Rollin on your first session. This will be a part 1.
Oh.
No, don't boo it. It was cute. This will be a part 1. This will be a 2-parter. Today we're going to kind of focus on what your players need to know before, in between session 0 and your first session. We're going to focus on what they need to bring to the first session, and then we're going to switch to you as a DM. What do you need to accomplish and how to write your first session? So, with that being said, let's start talking first about what your players should know between session 0 and session 1. So I got a list. I do. I made a list. So here's the thing. After session 0, whether you're running it online or in person, you should have, and honestly, you could even do this before session 0 if you want, give them all of the links to all the resources they need. So if you have your official table rules, if you want to make sure that they have access to any additional content, especially if you have your TTRPG system has a bunch of expansions like D&D 5e does, and if you're running things online, you want to make sure that they have access to your VTT, so like Roll20 or Foundry, as well as any tools that you as a DM like to use. So personally, I use Roll20 and I use D&D Beyond, and then I make sure my players download an extension called Beyond 20, not sponsored, but I should be because they are phenomenal. So Beyond 20 sends things from D&D Beyond to like Roll20 or Foundry or any other VTT. They're amazing. And also, you should make sure that they have everything they need to make a character sheet, which includes information on magic items or not, how much gold they should have if they're not just level 1, or if you're changing things, what stuff they have access to, what they could have picked up prior to the adventure starting. So those are some things that I feel like a lot of DMs forget to pass on to their players, and I believe is necessary to have a full completed character sheet.
Yeah, I agree with all that, actually. The only other thing that I would do, especially for the characters who like to have that in-depth backstory in advance, give them a little bit of plot hook to wherever you're going to introduce the party. I've seen that done with one-on-one sessions. I've seen that done with, okay, your backstory needs to end with you arriving at this specific tavern where we're going to start session 1. I've seen it done a variety of ways. If your player wants story, give them just enough to get to the beginning of session 1 already there, instead of having to guess why they're there. For the players who are really just there more for the mechanics and more for the experience, they get to figure it out along the way, and for some people they prefer it that way. It's just you give them enough to get started. Give them a little sample, if you
Little
will.
tidbit. Which we will kind of talk about in the next section when we talk about writing your first adventure. We will address like what to tell your players to get them ready. But that is something to note that your players should know in between session 0 and session 1. The other thing that I always say is you as the DM are, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you view things, the leader of the group. And this does not just include sitting down at a table and running a session. This also includes making sure people know who, what, when, and where they need to be, whether that be in person or what time they're showing up online. and where you're meeting, what systems you're using, how you're talking, if you're going to use Discord or if you're going to use an integrated voice system. So just make sure that you have all of those details hammered out, and whether or not you've told them all of this information over the weeks of preparation, the days of preparation. I personally always recommend a couple days before your first session, send a chonky boy
Extra thick!
of a message that has where, when, how you're talking, like any information that they may need. And also, as somebody who has anxiety, as a player, I like to just know, like, we're gonna be chill, like, just a reminder that this is a chill session. If you need to say anything, you can say anything. If you need to step out and take a break, you can step out and take a break, etc., etc. So I always recommend doing what I call a recap message with all of the info that they may have already had, and send it in a place that it won't get lost. So also, I know I'm talking a lot, but I had notes. I was ready. I also encourage, if you're using a group chat to communicate, I encourage using a group chat where you have, as the DM, the ability to pin or highlight some sort of message. So doing just like a text group chat can be kind of rough, especially because you want it to be a place where your players can send memes. You want it to be a place where your players can chat. So I personally recommend using something like Discord, where you can have separate channels. You can have a place where they can goof around, but you can also have a place where only your messages and the important messages are there. I know that was a little rambly, but I was excited.
Understandably so. There's a lot to go over here. So I would yes and that. A lot of that should be handled in session 0, but session 0, especially if you're not able to do a group one where everyone's in the same place, or if it can't be long enough to answer some of these questions in advance, then yeah, you need to make sure to get that information ahead of time, because otherwise, how on earth are you supposed to start playing if you don't know you need dice? And when you're playing with new players in particular, they don't know what dice they need. What's this math rock for? I don't know. Meanwhile, this is the most important math rock you're going to use in a 5e system or a D20 system in general. So yeah, you kind of need to know what materials you need in advance. For players, I generally recommend to not assume food and drinks are provided. Either chip in for group pizza, or bring your own water, or bring your own snacks. 9 out of 10 times the DM has already sunk hundreds of dollars into books. So don't just assume snacks are provided. D&D is not usually a short game. Assume you're going to need at least a water break somewhere in there.
Yeah, and if you're a DM, in that chonky message, first of all, if you're a DM, you are allowed to ask for help. You are allowed to say, hey, I don't want to be in charge of delegating who's bringing what, so I need one player to be in charge of organizing this for the whole campaign. And they can ask other people to bring stuff, but you're not organizing it. So that is something, if you're playing in-person sessions, that I would personally recommend. When I played with a group of children, mind you, I delegated. Each of them would bring something every week, and they rotated, and they were so excited about what snacks that they could bring. So, like, do that with your players. If a group of literally 10 to 16-year-olds can handle that, I think your adult players can also handle that. So...
Well, I've also seen a table of adult players struggle to solve logic puzzles meant for 5th graders, so I will reserve judgment.
Okay, that's fair. But still, my point being, and all of that stuff that we've said should be in your chonker boy message that you send out a couple days before session, and make sure that everybody sees and confirms that they have seen, with all of that info. So, with that being said, do you have anything else to add of what should happen in terms of communication logistics with players between session 0 and session 1?
Verify time. Like, it's one thing to say, hey, we're all meeting here and starting at this time. be upfront. If you're planning for this to be an hour session, that's very short. Good for you. I can't do an hour session. That's way too short for me. Like just be upfront about it. Hey, this is going to take an hour, 3 hours, 5 hours, whatever amount of time you anticipate. Be upfront about that so people can plan scheduling around it, because there is nothing less fun than going, oh hey, we're going to go to this D&D thing at 7 and we'll be home by like 10 or 11, and then not rocking in the door until 1 in the morning.
Yeah.
Now
So
every once in a while, if things run late, it is what it is, but be upfront with your time.
absolutely. And if you as the DM, especially once you start to learn this group's rhythm, so like I'm going to be honest, I've gotten to the point where when I play with a group of players that I know exactly how long they're going to take. Roughly within about 30 to 40 minutes, I can tell, like I can write a session and I know exactly when to end it. Now, granted, I usually write a little bit over just to be sure if I want to hit like my sweet spot time mark or what we usually expect. But be respectful of time and let them know ahead of time if it's going to be your typical, whether that be 2.5 to 4 hours, whatever. Set your typical, and then if you're planning a session that's like a big boy session or an end of like an arc or something really intense that you know is going to take longer, let them know ahead of time.
Yeah, spot on. I can't say anything else. That is absolutely perfect. Because people will forgive you if you're like, oh hey, we just got caught up in this. If it becomes a constant thing where people signed up for 2 hours and you're giving them 6, they're just they're gonna not want to stay, and that's not the point of the whole experience. So communication, communication, communication. What a shock. Our founding principle is still our founding principle.
And this is a free tip. This is not necessarily, this can be applied to anything, and not just like your session 1. If you hit that mark or like 20 minutes out and you're looking at what you have planned and you're like, there's not a good stopping point and it's going to be longer than 20 minutes, it's going to be probably another hour, stop right there. Confirm with your players it's okay to go late. Confirm that it's okay to continue to go and to go late. And honestly, they would love the break in immersion for a quick second, verify and check their boundaries and communication, as we always say.
Because let's be honest, you could write the best scene in the world, the coolest event, and they could genuinely love that event and have a great time and still be mad at you the next day when they only have 2 hours of sleep before they go to work. So communication, communication, communication.
Or alternatively, if you have a really great thing that you are so excited to get to and they're stressed or they have to pee because it's been long since a break, they're not going to pay attention. So, and you don't want that. So just grow with the flow. You'll learn the group as you go. And honestly, like make it so that players feel like they can press a pause button or slip away whenever they need to. Okay. I think that is all of our like logistical stuff that needs to happen. So let's talk about preparing your first session. So we have a couple schools of thought. One, we're going to start, or a couple ways of like how to write your first session as a DM, which this session focuses on. Sorry, players, we will get back to you. Don't you worry. But we're going to start talking about when you're running a pre-written campaign that you're not really adapting at all, right? You're kind of just running as whatever is pre-written. Then we're going to talk about when you're running a pre-written campaign, but you are full on adapting it, whether that be like an okay amount or like a ton. And then we're going to talk about running a homebrew campaign. We'll likely only get to the first topic in this podcast episode and then come back for part 2. As I said, we are doing 2 parts for this, to maybe check out the other 2, just depending on how much we chit chat. So I don't know about you, Kyber, but I've only run pre-written like one-shots or like what I would call a mini campaign. Like I ran the Lost Mines of Phandelver way back when I started, and I don't run a ton of pre-written stuff like as it's written. But I have read a couple one shots.
So part of it is understanding what a pre-written campaign is designed for. It's not designed for your average home table. It's designed for the officially run by WotC Wizards of the Coast, um, like their Adventurers Guild, like where you can go to these big events and there's like a dozen tables running D&D and you can just drop in wherever you're at. The premise there is you just get to play the game. Now, ironically enough, you're going to laugh at this. My very first session that I ever played of D&D was Storm King's Thunder.
Oh, that's hilarious! For those who don't
That was
know, I'm running Rise of the Ordning right now, and that is a Storm King's Thunder adaptation. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how to adapt. To adapt.
so, and I was talking to the guy who DM'd it off to the side afterward because frankly, um he was struggling with the way the biggest pro and the biggest con of a pre-written module is it's laid out for you. You're supposed to basically give your players only the options that are available through the module. Running a pre-written module involves saying no a lot more. Pre-written, actually the best way I can explain this is Baldur's Gate itself. I love the game Baldur's Gate 3. It is incredibly well made. It is probably the best video game adaptation of D&D I've ever experienced at this time. At the time of this recording, at least. By nature of being a video game, it has to restrict your choice. I will use Rise of the Ordning as an example. Zari gave me a feat that allows me to use my Eldritch Blast as effectively a grappling hook because of Grasp of Hadar. That's not an option for doing stuff like that in a pre-written module or in something like Baldur's Gate 3 where the rules have to be fixed with no wiggle room. The same effect has to effectively happen for everyone. That has both benefit of keeping things very standard and detriment of keeping you kind of in this more, how do I say this politely?
Just say it
It gives
impolitely.
millennial beige.
Oh.
Like I don't know how to say that better. It's bland, right?
And here's
So
the thing. Like Millennial Beige, there's no problem if you like that. There's absolutely no problem if you like that. I find that the majority of DMs tend to lean toward what I'm calling option 2 here, where you take a pre-written and you adapt it to the characters. But for the most part, when you're running a pre-written, the first arc is pretty well laid out, and it's like your players are gonna they're going to run into this. They don't have the option to go, oh, I'm gonna go fuck around here with Mr. What do they say? There's like the meme online where it's like there's a guy in the corner who has his hood up who's eyeballing you, and then there's this goblin that's named Gobbledygook, and the players just want to mess around with Gobbledygook and they completely miss the plot line. Like a lot of pre-written, you don't have that option. You can't roll with the players completely missing the plot line until you go into option 2, which is what I call the adaptive pre-written.
yes, as a beginner DM, reading through in advance a pre-written module, that way you have an idea of here's how I'm going to handle if they throw weird stuff at me.
And they will.
um oh, they inevitably will. I will use my very own first session as an example. So I was playing a monk. I was level 1. We're not going to talk about my stat layouts because they were stupid. um but I smacked a guy. We were fighting some goblins, and in the very first fight, I was down to 1 HP because level 1.
Mm-hmm.
So after that, I'm like, okay, this is insane. We have no healers because it was me, the monk, a warlock, and I think it was a fighter actually.
Hmm.
But basically, all DPS, no tanks because we're level 1. Um, and we go to the windmill in the early part of Storm Kings. For those who don't know, the windmill has a bunch of goblins in it. And so I got inside the windmill and rolled insanely good on stealth. Like nat 20 stealth. But I rolled insanely low on perception. So I'm just
Oh
climbing this
no.
windmill, not noticing any other goblins in the windmill.
Oh.
Meanwhile, my two companions are hiding behind a rock, getting while one goblin is like tripping over itself in the mud because it can't stop rolling nat ones. Meanwhile, a second goblin is rolling 18s to shoot at them with a bow from the second floor
Oh no.
and cannot seem to roll less than an 18. So I finally roll a decent enough perception check to look out the window of the third floor, see the second goblin. So I ask my DM, hey, I want to do a crazy thing, jump out the window, take this goblin with me, decapitate him on the way down, and use his body to absorb the impact of the fall. And the DM's like, okay, you're gonna roll an acrobatics check, you're gonna roll to hit, and then you're gonna roll another acrobatics check for the landing. I was like, I bet that's all dex stuff. I'm really good at dex. I proceeded to roll an 18, a 17, and a nat 20.
Nice.
Keep in mind, I had 20 dex
Mm-hmm. At level
as a
1?
level 1. Yes.
Okay, we don't need to go into how, but
My DM had us roll d20s for stats instead of
oh,
3d6.
got it. Okay, that makes sense. But the
There's a
point
reason we don't advise for that.
The point being is that your players will inevitably do something you didn't plan for. It's not all, especially when you have new players, I find. It's not just a I hit, you hit. I hit, you hit, right? Like especially in combat and stuff. So thinking through some of those by rereading or reading the whole first part, and actually if you're running a pre-written, I would recommend you read the whole campaign before you even sit down for session 1 and then reread the arc that you're on as you're approaching the arc. But we can talk about approaches and stuff later. But circling back to the whole point, when you're approaching prepping for a first session, just know that they are going to do something different. And if they are doing something different that you're not prepared for, or you don't like, or you're not able to handle because you're new or you're struggling, you're allowed to say no. And if a player's really upset about that, just work with them, talk to them outside of it, work it out, conflict management, communication. So I've had to say no to players before when I just was not prepared for it. And I mean, partially, can I be, as a DM, prepared for anything? You have both schools of thought, right? Like, I can be prepared for anything or improvise. But also, when you're a baby DM, you don't have those skills yet because you haven't practiced them. So just being okay with saying no or doing an adaptive no where it's like, I don't know if you have the ability to jump out the window and grab a goblin, right? Like being able to adjust what you want and managing a player's fun with what you are prepared to handle.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you run a pre-written, the benefit of it is that your whole first arc, because we're talking about the first session, right? Your whole first arc is laid out for you. Depending on how you want to run things, there's obviously some prep you can do. Like Kyber was saying, how are the players going to all get there? Why are they all getting there? And talking about them ahead of time, talking about it with them ahead of time, nailed it, first try. So that is obviously some prep that you can do. And the other thing is making sure that you have all of your maps. If you're using minis or tokens on a VTT, and being prepared for them to speed through things or get stuck in things.
Oh, absolutely. You're watching me think because now it's like, okay, where's a specific example? Okay. So, as an example of a place where someone could make an argument either way, You, as the DM, have been thrown a curveball. One of your players has soaked a bridge in oil and wants to light it on fire so that way when the enemies cross the bridge, they take fire damage. If they light it with like flint and tinder, it's like, okay, cool. That's going to have some sort of fixed damage. That's something you can Google. There's actually like whole stat blocks for just fire that's on the ground. As far as difficult terrain and all that. Where it gets complicated is if a player tries to get finicky and goes, "Yeah, I have the spell Sacred Flame. It calls down fire from the sky, but if you actually read it, it's radiant damage, not fire damage." So
Which is
that's where
frustrating
you
and a
got to
whole argument
find.
in itself. Same thing as chill touch draining blockers.
Yes.
Okay, anyway, sorry.
Point only being, you can play semantics just as much as a player can as the DM. You get to go, I love the idea. I just can't allow this to be the way you ignite it because that's not how the skill works. Let your players have to come up with a new way to solve their creativity. Let them keep exploring. One of them could go, "Ooh, what if I lit the tip of this arrow on fire and then shot it and did that instead?" Let them problem solve. And if they problem solve a whole new solution that doesn't involve you having to look up a stat block online that you like better, cool, encourage it.
Absolutely.
But you can say no to one piece of the idea without nixing the whole idea. You just got to make them work for it too, which buys you more time to research how you're going to stat that in the background. There's a
Correct.
reason you have a DM screen. I'm not saying you should have your phone out as you panic Google something, but I can say I've done it.
Oh, I always DM with a laptop or like a tablet. I'm like, I will be looking things up if needed.
And at the end of the day, once you've accepted a ruling and, written it down and you're like, "Man, I'm satisfied with how that rule works." As long as you're consistent about it, no one's going to question. It doesn't matter if it's not rule as written. As long as you're like, "Hey, in the case of a tie, it always goes to whoever's defending, regardless if it's the players or anyone else." As long as it's consistent, right? That's fair. If it meets, it beats, as long as it's consistent. It's just a matter of every time it's got to be the same because that's what we all agreed to. Within exception. Obviously, if there's something that has to happen for story reasons, I'm a big proponent of the idea that as a DM or GM of whatever you're playing, if your players are not supposed to succeed, don't even have them roll for it. Just narrate the cutscene.
I
Some
did that.
players are like, but my agency, and I'm like, and the point is, the guy that's arresting you is a level 20 adventurer. He could snap your neck with a flick of his wrist. There is no resisting.
Or an ancient blue dragon when you're level 8. Go watch episode 19.
Anyway, I just, all joking aside, I love how the players have not even questioned the exact methods of which my character got onto the
I
airship
know,
that's
it's
100 feet
hilarious.
in the air.
Well, yeah,
We actually have an answer, is
we
the funny
do.
part.
We do
Like,
have an
he
answer.
mechanically can do that. It's just one of those where the players didn't even question it. They're like, "Oh, hey, we got to get moving. It's got to keep the game going.
Yep.
We're not going to ask questions of logistics, even
Nope.
though there is actually an answer this time."
Uh,
And
anyway.
I have a specific example, actually.
Okay.
You can use knowledge of D&D against your players. By which I mean you can use that to guide them to the solution that you want them to reach. I was a player in this specific situation, but we were playing a little one shot. You're immediately going to know where this story is going because you were DMing it. We were playing a one shot, and I said out loud to the players, "Hey, prestidigitation exists. Why would there be blood stains or physical evidence like blood? Why would we even bother looking for that evidence? Most people on this campaign have prestidigitation. That's not what we should be looking for. We should be looking for other evidence." I was the killer.
It was so good. So we were
So
running.
I put them on a tangent for like 2 hours where they didn't even consider searching rooms because I had distracted them from the idea that that was something they could do. I tricked them into removing their own agency. You can do that to your players by giving them specific hints
Mm-hmm.
and then reminding them about details of the room.
Mm-hmm.
So if the puzzle is about light, you can remind them that there was an unlit torch in the corner and make that oddly specific.
Alrighty. That does kind of give a little bit of where it's a great place to segue into our next topic. And a great place to put a pin in the how do you run a pre-written campaign and get ready for session 1. And the answer to that is you run the pre-written campaign. Do your research, make sure the players know how to adapt and get there, and get to session 1 and what their character is going to do. And give them a chance to role play. The other thing that I always do, even in pre-written, sorry, my cat's walking across my screen. Lily, come here. Come say hi. Come here. No, now she's not complying. Anyway, one thing that I always do is I always allow, as I'm introducing each of the players, I allow them to describe themselves. I say like, hey, can you tell us what we all see? Some players get really nervous by that, so just make sure you let them know ahead of time if you're going to employ that. But I feel like that kind of covers everything that you would do to be ready for a pre-written campaign. So just to recap, how do the players get to the starting point? What encounters may you encounter, and are you prepared to run those? And then just making sure you review everything. You're not going to be prepared for everything that your players might do. So wasting time thinking through all of the possible options is not a good use of your time. Maybe through a couple obvious possible options, but what is a good use of your time is knowing what the world is doing and choosing how to respond, how the world would respond.
Yes.
Okay?
100%.
So I think with that, we are going to wrap up our conversation on how to run pre-written campaigns. And we're going to talk about how to run adapted pre-written campaigns and get your first arc ready for that, as well as how to run homebrew campaigns and talk about a couple really fun ideas for like your beginning quest hook. So, because meeting in a tavern is fun. It's really fun, actually. But what are some other fun ways to start a campaign? So with that, we thank you so much for hanging out today. Reminder, if you want to see some D&D campaign content, we already talked about it. If you want to see a ancient blue dragon scare the absolute crap out of some level 8 players, go check out episode 19 of Rise of the Ordning, or just the whole campaign in general. And if you want to play with us, I have a whole bunch of mini campaigns that are available on my website. So head on over to musesmythos.com. Links to all of our socials are down below. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, etc., as well as follow all of those links.
I'm a little biased. I say you should start at episode 20, but that's really about it. I'm looking forward to talking more about homebrew. A lot of people I know basically leap straight from running pre-written into running full homebrew, but we'll talk about that next time.
Yes, we will. So make sure you come back and subscribe and turn that bell on so that you are able to come back. And let us know if you have any additional comments, thoughts down below, and leave a like if you enjoy, and we will catch you all next time. So remember, keep your compass true. I did not mean to steal the whole outro. I was just chattering. No. And then I saw your panic, and then you're like, I'll talk about something else for a second.
I was waiting for you to specifically start the script, and I didn't catch it mentally when you did.
I did script bullet points and didn't read it directly, and I think that threw you off, so I'm sorry.
Dare you.
I know.
Traitor.
Also,
You've done me a betray.
can we appreciate the fact that Lily was running across my desk during the last bit and all you see is a tail? A tail.
Look, all I'm saying is, if you were to throw a true example of an unexpected, have like a bit where like you have all of the D&D maps and the minis laid out, and then
Mhm.
just Lily just hops onto the map.
She does that when I do tarot all the time. Because I sit on my floor and she always just comes, walks up, puts her little butt on it, and I'm like, girl, I'm writing. And she's like, pat, pat, pat. And I'm like, girl, I'm writing. She's like, pat, pat, pat. And I'm like, I need to see this card. She's like, my butt's here. I don't know what you want.
No, specifically, here's the bit. You've got like the players are standing around on this battle map. You're about to lay out the enemies, and then the cat just appears on the battle map. Enter the Katask. Like a cat Tarask.
I love that. That's really cute.
Put in some Dark Souls music or something, and you just like cut to a 3D animation of a cat the size of Mount Everest.